Ecosystem approach principles. The ecosystem approach is a strategy for the conservation, integrated management of land, water, and living resources that promotes conservation and sustainable use in an equitable way. It is based on the application of scientific methodologies. Human beings an integral part of many ecosystems, and three, using adaptive management to deal with the complex and dynamic nature of ecosystems. Therefore, because of its holistic nature, the ecosystem approach has the potential to mainstream conservation into general human affairs. However, this does not mean at the expense of conservationists losing sight of their own priorities. Rather, it integrates all aspects of conservation endeavors, landscape and ecoregional scale. Conservation approach. A landscape is composed of a heterogeneous area with a mosaic of patches with interacting elements. Some patches may be discrete with clear boundaries, while others grade into each other, and this approach includes the study of the dynamics of the systems and the movement and persistence of species within them. It combines and is relevant both to natural systems and those heavily influenced by human activity. An ecoregion approach has been also developed by WWF in the late 1990s that is being applied to the task of conserving ecoregions, that is relatively large units of land or water that is biologically distinctive and harbors a characteristic set of species, ecosystems, dynamics, and environmental conditions. This approach has been developed based on the recognition that small scale and site specific approaches to conservation do not achieve full conservation results. Therefore, landscape and ecoregion approaches are useful scales to assess threats for conservation planning purpose. This is because the focus of this approaches is to cover a wider area of conservation interest at multiple scales. In this regard, a conservation planning of this type can invite all stakeholders groups to come together, learn what can be done locally, and act with shared vision. Now, next one is the integrated approach to conservation planning. A single or an individual method cannot address the management of biological resources. However, it can be achieved through an integrated approach, balancing all available approaches depending on their area of interest. For instance, an approach of conserving the habitat has an input for the conservation of single species or genetic resources on their area of occurrence. In the same manner, conserving the ecosystem as a whole has a great significance for the maintenance of the structure and function of the ecosystem, including the human settings. The preservation of species on their natural habitat offers all the advantages of following natural selection to act, which cannot be recreated except to conservation. The maintenance of viable and self-sustainable populations of wild species in their natural state represents the ultimate goal, but habitat destruction is inevitable and endangered species needed to be preserved before they become extinct, which needs off-site conservation approach. The ex situ conservation, on the other hand, provides the opportunity to study the biology of and understand the threats to endangered species in order to eventually consider successfully species recovery programs, which would include a restoration and reintroduction of the species concerned. Conclusions. From this review, it has been learnt that integrative methods for identifying conservation strategies should be utilized to achieve sound conservation and sustainable utilization of the resources of biodiversity. Depending on the circumstances, certain scientific and social techniques or approaches such as in situ, ex situ, circa situ, ecosystem based, and landscape scale should be adopted and integrated when they become harmonious with the conservation objective. The CBD and many other literatures promote the ecosystem approach because it aims to put people and their natural resource use practices at the center of decision making and to seek a balance between the conservation and use of biological diversity in areas where there are both multiple resource users and important natural values. Therefore, the ecosystem approach has been remarked as the best approach for the conservation of biodiversity, but it does not mean that it excludes the application of other conservation approaches. Rather, it integrates within the nature and human systems.